Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of 5 Albums I Can't Live Without, 80s Rock Edition. So these are all perfect albums in my opinion. They're just really great start to finish. They're my go-to albums and there's not a bad song on any of them, making all of these albums I can't live without. But before we get into that, if you are new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with 5 albums I can't live without, 80s Rock Edition. So in no particular order, and kicking things off here, we're going to start with ZZ Top, Eliminator from 1983, and it's the band's 8th studio album. So first in a trilogy of albums for the band that modernized their sound, mixed in updated elements of electronic music along with their already classic blues-based boogie rock. And this was something that I think was a perfect musical style mix for the 80s, something that probably only ZZ Top could really achieve with this. And yet at the same time, it was something that was new, it was fresh, and there was 4 huge singles that came off of this album. You've got Gimme All Your Lovin', which Frank Beard provides one of the best opening drum riffs on, and then Got Me Under Pressure, which has a great chugging bass line provided by Dusty Hill, Sharp Dressed Man, just a very sultry rockin' song that's got some real smooth guitar from Billy Gibbons on it. But you've also got Legs, and it's just one of the greatest 80s rock sounds that merges in 80s keyboards and yet still keeps that classic feel. Again, something that ZZ Top was perfect at doing. But it's not just the hits that are great on this, it's the deep album cuts as well. They've got a real classic feel to them as well. You've got I Need You Tonight, I've Got the Six, Thug, all really great songs throughout this album here, making this an album I can't live without. Okay, next one up, we've got Journey Frontiers from 1983, 8th studio album from the band. Last one to feature original bassist Ross Valerie on it until the reunion in 1996. It's got a great mix of songs on it, from hard rock to ballads. Really good flow on this album too. Lots of peaks and valleys throughout on the listening. And it features an amazing opener on here, Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. It's got to be one of their hardest rockin' songs. But the album itself also features one of their most beautiful ballads, Faithfully, on it. And yet it's also got one of my favorite rock songs on it, Chain Reaction, is on here. And interestingly, the album itself was also supposed to feature the songs Only the Young and Ask the Lonely, and you probably recognize those though from either the greatest hits that you can see behind me there, or you know them from the soundtracks that they would appear on. But at the last moment they were removed from the album and held back for those soundtrack releases, and in their place they put the songs Backtalk and Troubled Child on here, which even the replacement songs are really, really good, which I think just shows you the quality of the band at this time. And even their outtakes were stellar, whether you're thinking about it in terms of Only the Young and Ask the Lonely that were held off for soundtracks, or the outtakes that later became album tracks on here, all really good. And the fact that they have now added back in Only the Young and Ask the Lonely onto the album itself makes this an album I can't live without. Next up, we've got Van Halen, 5150 from 1986, 7th studio album from the band. First feature new vocalist Sammy Hagar, coming from Montrose, and of course solo, and he had really risen up within the years prior and was pretty big name now to be coming into Van Halen. So really interesting, they add in the use of keyboards, heavy keyboard use throughout this album. They change vocalists, all big changes and things happening to the band. But with opening track on here, Good Enough, they presented a song that could have easily been sung by David Lee Roth, their former vocalist, and it could have appeared on any of their previous albums. So I think it helped easing fans into this new sound, this new lineup. But by second track, Why Can't This Be Love, it showed that the band was going to be innovating and trying new things, and that they weren't just going to be sitting back resting on their laurels. They weren't going to try to recreate the Roth era, and it showed that Sammy Hagar was the right man for this job at that time, providing a new depth and new vocal abilities to the band that really didn't exist previously with Roth. There was a very different party feel with Roth, and while Hagar had some of that, he definitely moved the band into a new musical style and allowed them to explore territory they couldn't previously do. For me, this album here, it's got one high point after the other on it, making this an album I can't live without. All right, next one up here, we've got Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, 1986, third studio album from the band. For me, this is where everything came together for the band. Previous album, 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit, a fantastic rock album, but just not a lot in terms of the peaks and valleys and things throughout. There weren't the hits on it, stuff like that, but for this album here, it changed all of that. And by opening chord on this album, when you hear the pipe organ on the song Let It Rock, for me at least, I knew this was going to be a big album. And I don't mean that in terms of sales specifically, I more mean it in the sense of scope and feel. It wasn't just going to be a straight ahead rock album. There was going to be something more going on with this one here. And it featured career-defining songs on it. You Give Love a Bad Name, Living on a Prayer, Wanted Dead or Alive. But it also features one of their most underrated ballads on here, Never Say Goodbye. And then the deep album cuts that are on this, really, really good too. You've got Social Disease and I Die For You, which is one of my favorite songs off of this album here, just really, really good. So start to finish, there's just not a bad song on it, and it just moves so well all the way through on this album, making it an album I can't live without. All right, and for the final 80s rock album, it goes to Aerosmith, Pump from 1989, 10th studio album from the band. This one here built on everything that was great from 1987's Permanent Vacation. The song lyrics, the music, it all really matched up here on some of the previous albums. I always felt that that didn't quite work out here, but here it really gels. It comes together. You've got sexy lyrics with sultry music. You've got socially conscious lyrics with dramatic music, and then romantic lyrics with moving music. And just overall, the album itself just has a really super high energy throughout. The pace is really good. The flow is really good. And there's a lot of really interesting interludes in it that assist in those peaks and valleys and transitions between tracks. You've got the opening 1-2 punch of Young Lust and Fine. The song Fine has such a great groove on it. And then you've got all these interesting sexual innuendos running throughout it that just give me a chuckle every time I listen to it. Don't know if you'd get away with that today, but just perfect for the 80s. And the singles that were on here were just stellar. Love in an Elevator, Janie's Got a Gun, What It Takes, which is one of the best 80s rock ballads in my opinion, The Other Side. And the thing is, the deep cuts on here were also just as good. And I've mentioned that before on some of these other ones, but it's just so true. These kind of albums that have the hit singles, but then have those deep album cuts that are just as good on it. Case in point, on this album here, Monkey on My Back, Voodoo Medicine Man, all really, really great tracks throughout. Any of those, I think, could have been released as singles, and they would have been hits in my opinion. There's no bad songs on here. You know, the band was firing on all cylinders for this one, I think, in particular, making it an album I can't live without. And there you go. That's 5 albums I can't live without, the 80s rock edition. Don't forget to check the description for links to related videos. In particular, I've done a Van Halen album ranking, a Bon Jovi album ranking, and I've done an entire separate review of Aerosmith's Pump, a classic album review for that one. If you're interested in any of those, do check the description for the links to those. And in particular, if you've enjoyed this video, please share it out on social media. Help spread the word that way. I would also really appreciate it. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye-bye.